The Big 8 season ends with a bang. 3 outstanding football games of the 4 played last weekend. The lone blowout, Kansas State losing big to Colorado. Colorado finishes the season 11-0 and a chance at the national title in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame. But 3 other great ones. Missouri and Kansas played a great one. Boy, they scored about 90 points in that one.
Exactly 90 points.
Yeah, about 90 points. Yes. Exactly 90 points. And I guess there was a great one in Stillwater. Iowa State coming away with a victory to go 6-5 over Oklahoma State, and also the annual showdown between Nebraska and Oklahoma. Good football game.
That turned out to be, I think, better than some folks thought it might be. Oklahoma put some points on the board, and let's give credit to Nebraska to start with. What a tremendous offense this year, 1 game away from a perfect season, and this might be one of the better Cornhusker teams in recent memory, maybe all the way back to the '83 edition.
They were excellent. And Jerry Godowski, I mean, we've said it all season long. This guy is the guy who kept getting better and better and better as the season went on. It'll be interesting to see how he does in the NFL. We'll address that issue a little bit later because you have some business to take care of.
Thank you so much, Drew. Let's take a look at the final standings in the Big 8 Conference. You can see Colorado on top with a perfect record, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Iowa State. Surprise team somewhat this year, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Missouri, and K-State. And the overall standings has the Buffaloes on top, followed by the Cornhuskers. Really a pretty good year for the Big 8 Conference. 2 teams that have battled the entire season to be in the top 5, and they're going to remain there when the season's over.
2 programs on the road back to respectability. The University of Missouri and the University of Kansas got together this past Saturday. Now, Bob Stoll is the first-year head coach at Missouri. He has changed the offense to a passing style. And at Kansas, Glenn Mason is in his 2nd year. He likes to throw the football, so you know what that means. Probably a lot of points. That's exactly what happened on Saturday in Columbia, Missouri. Let's return there.
Collegiate football's second oldest rivalry unfolded before 33,000 fans at Faurot Field in Columbia, Missouri. Mizzou's Skip Leach returned the opening kickoff 75 yards to the Kansas 16. 4 plays later, Tommy Stowers punches into the Jayhawk end zone. The Tigers led 7-0. On Missouri's next possession, Glenn Mason's Jayhawks held and forced a Tiger punt. Unfortunately for Jayhawk fans, the Tigers also forced a fumble. The junior tight end Larry Linthicum recovered at the KU 10. 2 plays later, quarterback Kent Kiefer finds Damon Mays, and it was 14-0 Tigers in the first quarter. Kansas, behind quarterback Kelly Donahoe, came right back with a lot of help from wide receiver Quentin Smith. Donahoe finds the senior for 46 yards and KU's first touchdown. The point after made it 14-7 Mizzou. The second quarter was like the calm before the storm that was brewing for the second half. From its 34, Mizzou drove 66 yards in 9 plays. Keeper's 28-yard scoring strike to Mays finalized the drive. Mizzou held a 21-13 halftime lead. Kansas coach Glenn Mason and his coaching staff did something to inspire the Jayhawks at halftime. Halfback Tony Sands scores from 7 yards out. Then KU attempted a 2-point conversion that would have knotted the game at 21. It failed. Sands was stopped short. The Tigers pounce right back on the Jayhawks. Second play from scrimmage. Keeper finds Lindsey Collins for a big one. 79 yards for the touchdown. Mizzou upped its lead to 28-19. KU counterpunch with a Sands scoring run. And what a run it was. 66 yards. Tuxedo Tony would pick up 215 yards and 3 touchdowns before the game was over. This score, plus the extra point, pulled Kansas to within 2, 28-26. After a Missouri punt, Kansas took over at its 31. 14 plays into the drive, Sands gets another TD from 9 yards out. The extra point failed, but KU had succeeded in gaining the lead, 32-28. Keeper goes to Skip Leach for the 29-yard scoring toss. Don Baker's point after was perfect, and the Tigers had climbed back in front, 35-32 after the 3rd period. Tony Sands gets some running room on the right side, 24 yards to the 6. 3 plays later, Donahoe sneaks over from the 1. KU led 39-35. A Missouri field goal made it a one-point game before a Tiger turnover resulted in Donahoe's second sneak for 6 points. Kansas led 46-38 with 2 minutes left in the game. Keeper and Missouri were not through. Stowers catches a pass out of the backfield and goes to the Kansas 1. On the next play, the senior scores, and Mizzou trailed by 2 points. A successful 2-point conversion would tie the game. It didn't work. Keeper's pass falls incomplete. Missouri loses another heartbreaker, 46-44. The Kansas Jayhawks go home to Lawrence with their 4th win of 1989. That's 3 more than the Hawks won last year. Missouri finishes its '89 season 2-9 in Bob Stell's first year.
So Kansas wins a wild one in Columbia, Missouri, 90 combined points on the scoreboard. Glenn Mason improves in his second year, comes up with 4 victories with this Jayhawk squad, and Bob Stoll will get the ship right in Columbia, Missouri. I'm sure of that.
We've talked about that much of this year. I think Bob Stoll is an excellent coach, and he'll start recruiting and getting some excellent players in Columbia, and I expect Missouri to be a much better football team next year. And Kansas with 4 wins. You mentioned, I think Glenn Mason is to be applauded for the efforts he displayed this year in Lawrence.
And one of my favorite players in the country, Tuxedo, Tony Sands, 1,100+ yards rushing this year. Our hats are off to Tuxedo.
When we come back, yes, they are a tip of the fedora. We'll take a look at OU and Nebraska. They had a good one in Lincoln Saturday.
Question reads, when was the last time Nebraska played in the Fiesta Bowl? Now, folks, I didn't come up with this, and even my partner, Dave, Logan, did not come up with this.
Notice how quickly he is to absolve himself from any of the wrongdoing in the show. He's done this the entire year.
And I've really danced quite nicely through this, haven't I? Sam Allen came up with this question, so if you've had amnesia or gotten hit on the head lately, maybe you don't know the answer to this. Otherwise, you should know the answer to this.
You're on a roll.
Last year they played in the Fiesta Bowl against the same team they'll play this year in the Fiesta Bowl.
You look at me like I don't know. They might not have known that.
Well, it's just enlightening you again. Florida State. And Florida State won that football game 31-28, and this year it figures to be a great one again. Florida State has improved as the season has progressed.
You know, over the last dozen years, Oklahoma and Nebraska, well, that's been the game in the Big 8 Conference. It has decided the championship, as I mentioned, the last dozen years. They still play this year, not quite as much at stake for the Cornhuskers or the Sooners, but anytime those two teams get together, pride may be the biggest factor. You know what happened? They tore the goalpost down in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we're going to show you what happened.
For the first time in more than a decade, the annual shootout between Nebraska and the Oklahoma Sooners would not decide who represented the Big 8 Conference in the Orange Bowl New Year's night. The 6th-rated Cornhuskers took the football away from the Sooners on Oklahoma's first possession and quickly put the first points on the scoreboard. It took just 4 plays and covered 32 yards. The Huskers' outstanding senior quarterback Jerry Godowski in his final home game gets the touchdown from 8 yards away. Just over 2 minutes had expired and Nebraska led 7-0. The Sooners bounced back behind freshman quarterback Steve Collins. On 3rd and 12 from his own 18, the rangy right-hander finds split end Arthur Guest downfield. The 5'11 junior does all the rest. 82 yards to tie the score at 7. Nebraska took the kickoff and moved the ball to the Sooner 31. There, Godowski fires a strike to wingback Richard Bell. The Cornhuskers had dented the Sooners' end zone the first 2 times they had the ball. After an Oklahoma punt, the Huskers put together another drive that would end in the Sooner end zone. Godowski again found the winning combination through the air, hooking up with tight end Chris Garrett, a sophomore from Snyder, Texas. 24 yards, and it was 22-7 Cornhuskers, still in the first period. The Sooners on 2nd and 12 from the Nebraska 17 pulled a fast one on the Huskers. Collins puts the ball on the ground. Then guard Mike Sawatsky picked it up. And to the surprise of everyone, including the photographer, rumbles 16 yards to the 1. The infamous Fumble-Rooski works to perfection. Leon Perry scored on the next play. The Sooners, after a successful two-point conversion, trail by just a touchdown, 22-15. But Nebraska's offense was working like a fine-tuned machine. Godowski drove the Huskers 73 yards to the Sooners' 7-yard line. There, the Oklahoma defense held, and junior Greg Berrios came on and booted a three-pointer from 24 yards out. Field goals seemed to be the fashionable idea. Oklahoma drove 63 yards in 14 plays. Place kicker R.D. Lasher nailed a 26-yarder, and Nebraska's lead was again 7 points, 25-18, as the teams headed for the locker rooms at halftime. Godowski, who would throw for 225 yards and 4 touchdowns, again hooks up with Garrett, this time from 23 yards out. After an Oklahoma punt, Nebraska picked up 2 first downs. It looked like the Sooners couldn't stop Godowski and the Huskers, but then they stopped themselves. A mishandled pitch is recovered by the Sooners' Greg DeQuazy at the Sooner 30. But OU turned right around and gave the ball back to the Huskers on an interception. Not a good idea. It took Nebraska just 5 plays to get into the end zone. Most of the yards came on one snap, the final one. A Godowski to Morgan Gregory TD pass that covered 38 yards. Nebraska was running the Sooners 39-18 with 3.5 minutes left in the third quarter. The Sooners did march 76 yards in 13 plays to start the fourth quarter. Perry's second TD plunge closed the gap to 14 points. Later in the quarter, Oklahoma drove to the Nebraska 36. But on 4th and 10, the Sooners were finished. Nebraska added another Berrios field goal late in the game to complete the scoring. Nebraska wins the showdown. The Huskers are 10-1, and rumor has them in the Fiesta Bowl against Florida State New Year's Day. The Sooners finished their first season under Gary Gibbs at 7-4.
So lots of points for Nebraska and Oklahoma. I suspect more than anybody may have thought going into the game. 2 pretty good defensive units, but Jerry Godowski and the Nebraska mates offensively really got things going. Godowski, as you saw, 4 touchdown passes. He ran for 1, and we were talking about his chances in the National Football League. I kind of like him. I think Godowski could be a pretty good player.
I agree with you. He has really gotten better and better each week. You know, Jake Young and Scott Evans, the outstanding defensive tackle for Oklahoma, were having a conversation after the ball game. And Evans said to Young, "When did you guys start throwing so much?" And Jake Young had to think about it. He goes, "Today."
Although they've thrown pretty well the entire year.
Yeah. When we come back, we'll take a look at Colorado's picture-perfect season. That's when we return.
I see you down the field. See you must win. I fight for victory. See you know no defeat. So roll up that mighty score.
And the second trivia question of the evening, the last time University of Colorado played in the Orange Bowl, who did they play and what was the score? So the Big 8 Conference would not think that I was biased at all, of course, attending the University of Colorado. I came up with this one, and it was not a pretty sight when CU played last in the Orange Bowl.
No, it wasn't. In 1977, there was a 3-way tie for the Big 8 title.
Remember the other 2 teams?
Oklahoma State and Oklahoma.
Very good.
Pretty good, huh?
Very good.
And they went to the Orange Bowl, did the Buffaloes, and they were ahead 10-0 against the Ohio State Buckeyes and Woody Hayes. And Woody got things together after halftime, didn't
I believe
he?
that was Big Pete Johnson, and that thing was over fairly quickly.
The last 3 weeks for the University of Colorado may be the most important 3 weeks in the entire history of football at that school. And they made it through successfully. They beat Oklahoma, they beat Nebraska, and they beat Oklahoma State. To cap off a perfect season, they had to beat Kansas State in Manhattan, Kansas. Kansas State, of course, a huge underdog. But for them, A great opportunity to pull the upset of the decade. Let's see what happens.
The Colorado Buffaloes closed out their regular season before a sparse purple-clad crowd in Manhattan, Kansas. On the first play from scrimmage, tailback J.J. Flanagan, who needed just 59 yards to reach the 1,000 mark, gets 57 of them. Only a touchdown-saving tackle from the Wildcats' Tyrese Hurds kept Flanagan from the end zone. But the senior would get the final 2 yards on the next play. He was at exactly 1,000 rushing yards for the season, although he didn't start until Eric Bieniemy broke his leg in the 6th game this year. Flanagan's TD put CU ahead 7-0. Only 30 seconds had expired in the contest. On the Wildcats' first possession, Coach Bill Snyder tried to fool the Buffaloes. It didn't work. Quarterback Paul Watson's pass is intercepted. Freshman Doug Adkins, in his first start at strong safety, comes up with his first interception. Quarterback Darian Hagan led the Buffs downfield. On the drive's 10th play, the sophomore, who was recently named the Sporting News Player of the Year, gets 18 yards to the K-State 1. He would score on the next play, and Bill McCartney's team led 14-0 with almost 9 minutes left in the first period. Action moved into the second quarter. After a Ken Culbertson 21-yard field goal, CU led 17-0. Then Hagan got his second score, weaving 30 yards through the Cats' defense for a 24-0 advantage. The Buffs closed out the first half scoring with just over 3 minutes left before intermission. On 4th and goal from the K-State 3. Flanagan gets his second touchdown, diving the 3 yards for the score. The second-rated Buffaloes led comfortably, 31-0 after 2 quarters. The Wildcats came out fired up after halftime. Watson's pass to Alan Frederick goes for 19 yards and K-State's initial first down of the game. 9 plays later, Watson, just a sophomore, finds wide receiver Pat Jackson for a 12-yard scoring toss. The 2-point conversion was good, and the Wildcat faithful had something to cheer about on a cool, windy Kansas afternoon. CU quickly ended the cheering. Hagan connects with senior Jeff Campbell. The 14-yard gain put Hagan over the 1,000-yard mark in season passing yardage. On the next play, from the K-State 32, Flanagan burst through a gaping hole that left offensive guard Joe Garton blew open. Number 2 coast 32 yards. After the successful extra point, CU led 38-8. Flanagan, who had rushed for a career-high 246 yards, races untouched 57 yards to score. He finished the jaunt near the CU locker room. He should have kept going. He was done for the day as Colorado was in total control, 45-8 in the third period. CU's defense then came up with another big play. Reserve linebacker Rob Hutchins, a Colorado Springs native, picks off Watson's pass and shows the moves of a running back, rumbling to the Wildcat 14. Next play, Hagan gets the final 14. That run also moved him over the 1,000-yard mark in rushing. The sophomore, teammates call Mr. Magic, is the first Big 8 quarterback to ever gain 1,000 yards in both rushing and passing in one season. It was 52-8. K-State added the David Kruger field goal, and CU scored once more to make the final Colorado 59, Kansas State 11. The Buffs were a perfect 11-0, and the locker room celebration was sweet. Kinda had an orange flavor to it.
All right, let's take this over. How do you vote, man? We accept.
All right. 56th annual Orange Bowl game.
56th annual, man. 56th annual. Let's sing that song now.
I see you down the field. See you must win. I fight for victory. See you know no defeat. So roll up that mighty score. Never give in. Shoulder to shoulder we roll.
Marion Hagan needed to have a big day throwing the football and running the football to become the first Big 8 player in history, and only the 5th in the history of the NCAA, to finish a season with 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards in the air. And he did have a pretty big day.
He got it. Bill McCartney left him in the game well into the third quarter. He got it with a 14-yard touchdown run, I think with about 3 minutes left. And so Hagan has had an outstanding sophomore campaign, received little Heisman consideration, and looks to be a good player for the Buffs the next 2 years.
And Colorado is headed, as you all well know by now, to the Orange Bowl to take on the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Colorado will play for a national championship, and that's exciting for people in Boulder, and should be an exciting ball game for people around the country. And we will be down there, won't we?
So very glad you reminded me. We are going to be down there, a 90-minute special, and we will invite you to check your local listings to find out exactly when you will see the show. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, you'll have a choice as to when to watch it, or hopefully, if you like Notre Dame and Colorado, you'll watch all three. But we're excited to be down there, and I'm sure it's going to be a fine game between the Irish and the Buffaloes.
And we will have our suntan lotion with us.
Yes.
And I should remind you...
And golf clubs.
And golf clubs also. I'm glad you reminded me of that. And if you want to get the Orange Bowl program, the official Federal Express 1990 Orange Bowl program, this is what you should do. The official souvenir program of the 1990 Federal Express Orange Bowl is on sale now. Exciting features, vivid color photos, complete team rosters, and vital statistics highlight this year's edition. To order yours, send a check or money order for $7 per program to Touchdown Publications, Orange Bowl program, P.O. Box 89, Trenton, New Jersey, 08615. Prices include shipping and handling. Quantities are limited, so get to it in a hurry.
We'll come back and you...
Here's another 11-part question for you. When was the...
We're famous for that this year, aren't we?
When did the Cyclones play in their first ever bowl game? Who'd they play? What'd they play? What time of the day was it when the game ended? All that kind of stuff.
How many band members went?
Yeah.
We should help. This is a bit unfair. We'll thank our producer, or you can, Sam Allen, for coming up with the question. But their first bowl game ever for Iowa State was in...
1971.
We worked
I
together.
got the 19, yeah.
The Sun Bowl. They played LSU. Lost the game 33-15. And do you remember who LSU's quarterback was? If you're a Baltimore Colt fan, you should.
Burt Jones. He of the light beer commercials also a little bit later on.
That's right. Pretty good player. Well, Saturday in Stillwater, it was the Iowa State Cyclones against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Two of the better quarterbacks in the Big 8 Conference. Two guys that have really performed admirably this year. Mike Gundy of Oklahoma State and, of course, Brett Oberg of Iowa State. Let's take a look at what happened Saturday between the Cyclones and the Cowboys.
The Iowa State Cyclones had a lot at stake Saturday as they invaded Lewis Field in Stillwater, Oklahoma for a battle with the Oklahoma State Cowboys. The spark came from junior Blaze Bryant, who shredded the Cowboys' defense for 208 yards on the afternoon. Bryant put the Cyclones on the board early after a Cowboy turnover set up Iowa State at the OSU 29. Bryant carried 3 times the final haul from 4 yards out, and with 13 minutes left in the first quarter, Iowa State had the early advantage, 7-0. Oklahoma State took the kickoff and drove to the Cyclone 30. Then disaster struck again.
Looks, now throws down the middle, and it is picked off by Iowa State's Tim Baker.
Baker's interception set the stage for Brett Oberg and Bryant.
Drops back, looking to throw, and he's got Blaze in the flat at the 50, at the 45, at the 40, makes a cut, and he's all the way down to about the...
But OSU held tough, and the Cyclones settled for Jeff Schudak's 39-yard field goal. 5 minutes remained in the first quarter, and Iowa State led 10-0. 1 second and goal from the Iowa State 6. Gundy, the Big 8's career leader in total offense, finds Gerard Green for the score. 11.5 minutes remain before the break, and OSU is right back in the contest, trailing by just a field goal, 10-7. The Cowboys kicked off to Iowa State, and that kicked off the Bryant Express.
It's the delay to Blaze. He pops up through there. He's up to the 30, puts his head down, and drives forward to the 35. He almost got the...
Bryant would end the regular season with more than 1,500 yards rushing, a school record by more than 200 yards. His 2 fine runs set up fullback Ron Wilkinson for the score.
And the handoff to Wilkinson. Touchdown, Ronnie Wilkinson.
Wilkinson had reason to celebrate. Iowa State led 17-7 after a time-consuming 11-play, 74-yard drive. But the Cyclones' luck ran out, as did the clock, when Cowboy defensive lineman Stacy Satterwhite sacked Oberg to end the half. Costly is the best way to describe OSU's first possession of the second half. On the first play from the Cowboy 28, following an Iowa State punt, halfback Gerald Hudson is hit by outside linebacker Larry Radigan. The ball pops loose, and teammate Jeff Bauer, who walked on the Cyclone team last year, makes the recovery at the OSU 33. 4 plays is all it took for Iowa State to increase its lead.
First down play. The fake pitch, Oberg rolling to his right. If he keeps it, he's got room. He's at the 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
The senior quarterback is not known for his running ability, but against the Cowboys, Oberg would gain 80 yards on 14 carries. And this TD that moved Iowa State to a 24-7 advantage with almost 11 minutes left in the third quarter. Gundy rallied the Cowboys. A 9-yard TD pass to Robert Kirksey made it 24-14. The OSU senior threw for 315 yards on the day and moved past the 2,000-yard mark for the season. The 6-footer's third 2,000-yard season. The only player in conference history to do that. It was 24-14 as play entered the fourth quarter. Gundy then fired his third TD pass, the second to Green, this one from 5 yards out. OSU had closed the gap to 24-21 with 5.5 minutes left. Then Bryant finished off a great day and the Pokes, busting loose for 62 yards to the OSU 1.
Oberg hands it off to Bryant, and he pops through for some yardage. He's at midfield. He might go 40, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. He's all the way to the line.
He scored on the next play. Iowa State goes into Stillwater and wins 31-21. The Cyclones finish 6-5. Jim Walden's team is hoping there is one more game left, a bowl game. Pat Jones' Cowboys finished their campaign 4-7, losing their final 2 at home.
And so the Cyclones wind up their season 6-5, and I would guess that everybody in Ames has to be fairly pleased with what Jim Walden has accomplished this year. You look back to a couple of games, maybe 3 games, but in particular the Oklahoma game, they play without Jeff Shudak, their all Big 8 kicker, a guy that they couldn't use in key situations. They lose to the Sooners by 3 points.
That's right. In the Minnesota game, maybe they could have won. Iowa game, they played pretty well.
Another one.
It's not too far-fetched to say, if all things go well, 8-3 or 9-2, within the realm of possibility. When we come back, we'll take a look at our players of the week and our plays of the week. For the Big 8, and especially in the rushing department, only the 3rd time in the history of the Big 8 that 5 backs were over 1,000 yards, and you have to go all the way back to 1973 the last time that happened.
Of course, the Big 8 conference, a rushing conference, and only appropriate that we take a look at the final stats. In terms of yards rushing, you can see Blaze Bryant was the conference leader, 1,500-plus yards, followed by Ken Clark of Nebraska. J.J. Flanagan, he took over for the injured Eric Bieniemy in 3rd place. Tony Sands, what a year he had for Kansas. Darian Hagan, the fine quarterback from Colorado, and Jerry Godowski, 75 yards short of 1,000 yards rushing for the year. And although Jerry Godowski didn't make the 1,000-yard rushing club, had a great year throwing the football. And when you talk about rushing and the other complements of offense, I guess total offense is the next key stat.
Funny you should mention that, because that is the exact direction we're going right now. Let's take a look at the total offense leaders in the Big 8 this year. Brett Oberg of Iowa State, who had a magnificent year, is on top. Then Godowski second. Mike Gundy from Oklahoma State. Kelly Donahoe from Kansas. Kent Kiefer, who set all sorts of throwing records at Missouri this year, is 5th. And then Darian Hagan, who threw the ball and ran the ball so effectively for Big 8 champion Colorado, is 6th.
We start with the Big 8 Offensive Player of the Week. And this week he is the 5th-year senior quarterback from the University of Nebraska. Jerry Godowski. What a great game indeed he had against the Oklahoma Sooners. He was 12 for 15 for 225 yards and 4 touchdowns. His touchdown throws covering 31, 24, 23, and 28 yards as the Huskers rolled over the Sooners 42 to 25. Jerry Godowski is the Big 8 Offensive Player of the Week.
And the Defensive Player of the Week goes to free safety Tim Baker from the Iowa State Cyclones. Baker had the kind of day that a defensive player dreams about. He had 2 interceptions, he caused a fumble and recovered a fumble, and he also was in on 8 tackles. And for that, Baker is the Defensive Player of the Week, and his team pulled out a 31-21 victory over Oklahoma State. So once again, the Defensive Player of the Week in the Big 8, free safety Tim Baker from Iowa State. It is time for our Play of the Week. We only have one this week because it was such a good one. The origin of the fumble-roosty play. Where'd that come about? Okay.
You asking me? I have no idea.
I was asking the guy sitting to your right.
Well, Nebraska, I know Nebraska has run it before, effectively. They've done it in the Orange Bowl.
But should we credit Nebraska?
Let's give the Huskers some credit.
Tom Osborne. We'll give him credit for the Fumble-Rooski play, and it was run against him this week by the Oklahoma Sooners. Let's pick it up. When the Fumble-Rooski is run effectively, it fools everybody, including the cameramen. And this one was run almost to perfection. The guy with the football, 6'2", 270-plus pound Mike Sawatsky, and he's rumbling toward the end zone, but he's denied. Gets down to about the 1-yard line. I guess guys named Sawatsky don't get in the end zone that frequently.
What do you mean a guy like Sawatsky doesn't get in the end zone much?
Well, just a guy who's 6'6" or 6'2" and 270-something pounds named Sawatsky doesn't get in the end zone that much.
Backstroke. We'll come back, and we've got the pick segment for you, and we'll leave you with a beautiful look at Kansas University in Lawrence.
Valiant effort this past week because you were...
we're still doing this?
Yeah. You were 3 games behind going into last weekend, and you differed on me on 3 ball games, trying to come away with the 3 games you needed to get level, level par.
Get to this, would you please?
Yes. You were 1-3. This was your worst week. You were 1-3. You missed Missouri. Kansas won there. You missed Iowa State winning, and you missed Nebraska beating Oklahoma. And I had all of those except Missouri. So I finished 3-1. And overall, pat myself on the back, 44-10, and you finished 39-15. And at the top of your screen, you see who's buying dinner. Well,
so that must mean I'm 5 games down going into the bowl season. How many bowl games do we have in order for me to catch up here?
Now, when did the bowl
17,
season get
bowls?
added to this?
I thought that's what we had stipulated early in the program.
Maybe you did that in your own imagination.
All right, I'll buy dinner, and I'll buy you dinner in Miami.
That's right.
We're going to be down there again, as we mentioned earlier in the show.
Should I order now?
A 90-minute special. I'll ignore him. I do that well. And we hope that you will tune in. It will be seen in various areas at various times, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. January 1st, we'll have a 90-minute Orange Bowl special from, as you might have guessed, the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, we will be right on the field of the Orange Bowl. And as a matter of fact, we mentioned Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Check your local listings around the country as to when you will see the game. I know guaranteed it will air 90 minutes before the actual kickoff, that on Monday. So it'll be fun. We're looking forward to that.
Should be fun.
Yeah. Well, look a little more pleased.
Should be. I don't mind buying dinner. I just thought I had a chance to catch up in the bowl season. Well, that'll be a separate wager.
Maybe I'll
of some
give you
sort.
that opportunity. Let me sleep on it.
Yeah, we should tell everybody also we have a show next week.
That's right. Well, so I'll tell everybody if I decided to let you. I'm sure these people don't care about that.
Drew, you're on borrowed time.
That's
here.
right.
Go ahead and
In any event, we will be back next week. We'll wrap up the entire Big 8 season, take a look at how each school progressed through the season and where they are as the 1990 football season and the recruiting year begins. We'll do all of that next week.
Say goodnight, Drew.
That's right. If I didn't have him cueing me, I'd be totally lost. For Harry Callis, Sam Allen, our producer, my partner Dave Logan, I'm Drew Goodman. We'll see you again next week. That's 1 week from today.
The Big 8 Gridiron Report is brought to you by Toyota and your Northern Colorado Toyota dealers. Who could ask for anything more?